Jules Verne, his novels, The Extraordinary Voyages, thrilled the imagination of the public across the world. His visionary books took exploration and technology to new frontiers. Jules Verne dreamt of the underwater world and of space exploration. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and From the Earth to the Moon became his most famous novels. Here is the odyssey of two men who have reached Jules Verne's dreams and beyond. They embody the new extraordinary voyages from the abyss to the stars.
I just really enjoy being underwater. I enjoy the physical experience of it. I like the personal challenge of it. When you're scuba diving, you're really on your own. If you make a mistake, you'll die. Some people, they either like being underwater or they don't. And it's a difficult set of experiences to describe to somebody that hasn't done it.
All right, let's try a rehearsal, please. And action.
Hi.
It's real quiet up here.
You bet. You bet the last one I'll eat.
It's not as quiet as it is down there. You know, I've been fascinated by ocean exploration since before I ever saw an ocean. When I was a kid in Canada, I lived, I think, 600 miles from the sea. But I watched the Jacques Cousteau specials on TV, and I thought they were absolutely incredible.
La mer n'est que le véhicule d'une surnaturelle et prodigieuse existence. Là, je suis libre.
As a child, I lived in a fantasy world of science fiction and fantasy, and you know, heroes and villains and all that sort of thing. And the thing that appealed to me most about science fiction and fantasy was the idea that you would go to a different place, an exotic place.
We're going backwards.
As I got older, I realized I'm not going to another planet in my life, really. But there's another planet right here under the ocean. And so at the age of 16, I said, I want to learn to scuba dive. It was wanting to go to another world, very specifically. Not even a pioneer, I just wanted to see it. I didn't care if I was going someplace other people had already been before. That came later. Whenever you just switched off, you better switch back on.
Rover 1 and Mir 1, we be advised, we have lost our starboard horizontal thruster. We've lost AC, and we have lost pan and tilt, so we're probably going to have to abort.
I really feel privileged that I've gotten to do work with the filmmaking, films like The Abyss and Titanic, where we got to do, you know, a lot of underwater work, which I really enjoy.
First recorded dialogue, underwater, on film, for a theatrical motion picture in the history of the world.
That's what I love about filmmaking. You can make a film about anything. You know, if it's coming from the heart, it doesn't matter what the subject is. You just have to believe in the subject.
Okay, here we go, and action.
There was no territory in which it was released that it was not the #1 film. You can't predict that sort of thing. If I tried to go out and do it tomorrow, it wouldn't work.
Do I go left or do I go right? I better get this right.
And then I just took it a step further with the documentary films. So it's a combination of things for me. You know, the work I've been doing recently. It's filmmaking. We're telling a story. It's a unique kind of filmmaking, which is documentary filmmaking, which I have a great deal more respect for now than I did probably before I started it, because I realize how difficult it is to be out there without a script, making a film without actors, making a film where you don't get to do things twice, do another take to improve things. You're really, you know, shooting from the hip all the time, and I enjoy that. I find it really liberating, but it's also very difficult. Where I seem to fit best is the highly technical, highly coordinated type of work that's necessary to work in the deep ocean, which is a very unforgiving environment. And it requires, you know, some pretty advanced engineering to be able to do anything in that environment. And there's something about the engineering challenge that I also like. You know, a lot of the fun and personal interest for me is in the preparation. You have to go prepared. On a given dive, I may see things that I've never seen before. I will always see things I've never seen before. Often I'll be seeing something that no human being has ever seen before, and filming it in 3D at the same time.
Oh my God, look at that squid!
So if it crosses my field of view, it gets immortalized on 3D, which can be blown up to IMAX if necessary. So if nothing else, we're creating an amazing archive of deep ocean images that I think is probably, you know, going to have some value over time. You're on a space mission, almost. You know, you're using absolute cutting-edge, state-of-the-art robotics and you know, electronics and technology that takes years to develop. Because that's a way for me to go to another planet. That's a way for me to go and be like I'm in a science fiction story.
That's just a huge colony of microbes. This is just acres and acres of this bacterial mats.
Look at that. This could be like a little glimpse back in time.
Yeah, a couple billion years ago.
Hydrothermal vents have been on planet Earth since the oceans were formed. It may have been sites like these around which life itself began. We can just sort of scoop up top area of that, maybe a little bit of the sediment below. Excellent. Nice sample. You can see all the stringy little filaments that make up the map.
So I'm even comfortable going to things that have already been seen, already been discovered, and imaging them in the way that we can do it, you know. I think I have a special relationship with Titanic. For me, it's a relationship with a piece of history and an environment that I now understand very well. It exists in my mind as an edifice that I can go to. But I think, you know, I think that's where it has meaning. When you see Ghosts of the Abyss, or when you see the movie, we present the shipwreck the way it is in our romanticized imagination. You approach from the bow, and you see this magnificent prow coming out of the eternal darkness. That was not my experience. On my first dive to Titanic, we had a hard time finding the wreck. When we finally found it, we came upon it in such a way that it suddenly materialized, this wall of rusty, riveted steel. We almost ran into it. The pilot kind of overreacted, rose up in a big cloud of dust and sediment. We came over, and then we landed on top of the ship.
Okay, there too. Landed right on the grand staircase. You guys set the launch?
And he sat down, and there was this moment of, Are we okay?
I name this ship Titan. May God bless her and all who sail her.
Our consciousness projects meaning onto this big piece of metal. And we, because we're emotional creatures, we can imagine what it was like to have been one of the people on board. We can imagine what those final minutes, what the fear, the separation from loved ones, all of those things. When I flew the robot through the inside of the ship, nobody had ever done that. And so there was no way to know what was there. There was absolutely no way to know. From the time the ship was last photographed when it left port, to the time our robot went inside, there was no way to know what was inside that ship. We do have to think about our own mortality. We have to think about our own death. We have to think about what that means in terms of our relationships with the people that we love. We have to think about their potential deaths as well. It's something that as human beings we've got to deal with. But we need to have a way of dealing with it that's not too in our face, And I think that's part of the power of the Titanic story, because Titanic is just about death. That's what it's about.
The 1,500 souls lost here still speak, reminding us always that the unthinkable can happen, but for our vigilance, humility, and compassion. Goodbye.
It's a very powerful place. And, you know, at some future time, I might go back and do more exploration there, just for myself, not even because I think a film about it would be that important. It's just a very fascinating process. There's something about the overlay of the history, the elegance, the story, the tragedy, and the technology required. You're not going to an alien world. You're going to something that seems very alien, very bizarre, but it's because it's so surreal and tremendously exciting. You know, just as a filmmaker, as an explorer, just as a fan of the Titanic story. "150 years ago, you could walk around the Americas and you just walk, and you'd be exploring. You'd be seeing something new that certainly Europeans had not seen. You can't do that anymore. You know, not on planet Earth. A few places, maybe Papua New Guinea, you can walk someplace that nobody's really seen. But it's that type of exploration is kind of over. So it's all about technology now to go to the more remote places. Because obviously the things on Earth that haven't been explored are because people couldn't get there. They couldn't get there because of technology. So that's part of my attraction to it, you know. There's something about the marriage of human and machine to accomplish something greater, you know, that fascinates me. That's why I love the Mars rovers. I love astronautics. I love the idea of the mind creating the means to adapt to environments that we're not physically adapted to. You know, a bird can fly better than us, a dolphin can swim better than us, but you know, we can do all of those things. We're the only all-purpose animal, and it's because we have the all-purpose, you know, computer to do it.
It hit the seafloor going so fast that it dug in right up to the level of my hand, right there.
The idea of people challenging themselves with adventure and exploration, and that spirit, that pioneering spirit, that's something that we need to celebrate. And people need to do more of it. And if they can think of ways to use filmmaking to do that, then we all benefit. Because, you know, we've got 6 billion people in the world. They can't all go jumping into submarines or climbing to the top of mountains or going into the jungle. You know, they'll ruin those environments, they'll overwhelm them. That most people won't have the means or the wherewithal to do it. But through film, we can all share. You know, in a world where people think everything's been done, everything's been explored. We're just getting started. The oceans are they're not infinite, certainly, but the amount that we've explored, especially in the deep ocean, is only a tiny % of the total. And space, I mean, we're a little tiny grain of sand in a vast universe, and we got to the next grain of sand, the moon. You know, that's still to this day probably the single greatest technical triumph that human beings have managed to pull off. But in the vastness of the universe, it's just the first baby step, you know.
The moments of touchdown were the most important and the most intense. When we opened the hatch and went outside on the surface, there was more of a relaxed moment to that. There was a great significance in 2 people walking for the first time on the surface of the moon.
Forward stability is not quite as good as it is in the conventional, more conventional, but after another.
Looking at how things are today and the challenges that I have, the successes, the things that have come my way, I don't think I would do anything at all differently. I guess all the time I was a pilot, there's stars in the sky, there's the sun in the sky, there's the moon, but they really had no significance. There was no airplane that was going to fly to the moon. It was just out of the realm of thinking. When rocket travel became something that might be done by Sputnik putting a satellite in orbit, spacecraft going to different places, and then the first human beings.
500 miles up, the artificial moon is boosted to a speed counterbalancing the pull of gravity and released.
By the time that we were beginning to think about the first human beings, the president was already considering what he could do as a significant challenge to ourselves to demonstrate what we could do to the rest of the world. And so on May 25th, only 20 days after a suborbital flight by one of our astronauts, on May 25th, President Kennedy challenged our nation to go to the moon with a human being and to bring him back safely. Then it became an objective.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won. And they must be won and used for the progress of all people. We shall send to the moon 240,000 miles away from the control station in Houston, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Thank you.
There was a commander of the mission, that was Neil Armstrong. I was assigned the specialty of the lunar module, and Mike Collins was assigned the specialty of the command module. Neil and I were occupants of the lunar lander, and Mike Collins was from a pool that were going to be command module pilots. So it was not possible for him to be the first or the second or the third to walk on the moon. It was logical to have the senior person be the one given the symbolic privilege of being the first on the moon.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 2 hours, 23 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. The third member of the Apollo 11 prime crew now aboard the spacecraft. We had it logged at 7:07 a.m. Ten, 9, Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Some of the type meals that we have on Earth. Matter of fact, on this flight, we've carried along pieces of bread. And along with the bread, we have a ham spread. And I'll show you, I hope, how easy it is to spread some ham. Fireman of 06.
The most significant part of our mission was the powered descent itself. And of course, that culminated the closer we got to the ground and the lower we were running on fuel, looking for an appropriate place.
The descent orbit insertion maneuver will be performed on the backside of the moon, set for 101 hours, 36 minutes, 14 seconds. And the beginning of the powered descent at 102 hours, 33 minutes, 4 seconds. We're now 55 seconds from reacquiring Apollo 11 on the 13th revolution.
The culmination of a successful landing is actually touching down on the moon and shutting off the engine.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
It was at that moment that Neil Armstrong and I realized that we had successfully completed what we had set out to do.
I'm going to step off the limb now.
Neil knew that the world was waiting for what will he say when he puts his first step on the moon.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
But that's sort of an artificially created situation. I don't believe that when I felt like I was putting my first step or two that was something really monumental. It was something I understood was going to be relatively easy to do, and it happened, and we went on from there.
It's a very soft surface, but here and there where I plug with the contingency sample collector, I run into very hard surface, but it appears to be very cohesive material of the same sort. I'll try to get a rock in here. Just a couple.
Oh, that looks beautiful from here, Neil.
It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here.
This is Houston reading. Yeah, radio loud and clear. How's it going?
Roger, the EVA is progressing beautifully. I believe they're setting up the flag now.
Great.
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike. It really is.
Oh, geez, that's great.
There were scheduled photographs to be taken of the landing craft as we walked around, of the panorama, but nothing really said we should document each other doing things. So those were pretty much done as they occurred. And it just seemed natural to me, when I was fascinated with the way that the lunar surface behaved, that I should record what the boot print looked like. So I took a picture of the ground, then I put my foot down, and then I took a picture of the print that it made. And then I thought, that's sort of lonesome looking. So if I just have my boot on the ground, you can't see the print. So I had to take a picture of the boot slightly moved away from it. I don't know whether that ever sunk in as being a significant achievement.
It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here representing not only the United States, but men of peace of all nations, and with interest and a curiosity and with a vision for the future. Ignition.
what we're charged with doing is performing the mission as best we understand it. And now we come back and we realize, by the reaction that we've seen around the world, that indeed we have been successful, and it means a tremendous amount. It's not like we didn't expect it would. We knew it would. But now our challenge shifts gears from being one of performing something to now being on stage and relating or telling the story of that. And those are two really different situations.
Is now unveiling the plaque that is.
Roger, we've got you bore-sighted, but back to one side.
Bore-sighted. For those who haven't read the plaque, we'll read the plaque that's on the front landing gear of this LEM. There's two hemispheres, one showing each of the two hemispheres of Earth. Underneath it says, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind."
It symbolized our nation's contribution by the eagle, the symbol of our nation, landing on the moon with the Earth in the background. The other additional element that created great meaning to this endeavor was that it was carrying the olive branch of peace and gave meaning to the words that were left on the moon by our mission. We came in peace for all mankind.
I don't know if this will work or not, Charlie. Well, in my left hand I have a feather. In my right hand a hammer. And I guess one of the reasons we got here today was because of a gentleman named Galileo a long time ago, who made a rather significant discovery about falling objects in gravity fields. And we thought that where would be a better place to confirm his findings than on the moon. And so we thought we'd try it here for you. The feather happens to be appropriately a falcon feather for our falcon. And I'll drop the two of them here, and hopefully they'll hit the ground at the same time. How about that? That proves that Mr. Galileo was correct in his findings. Oh, there's a neat way to travel. Isn't that great? Uh-oh. There she is, John. Somebody up there likes this. Don't run into our home.
I think humans want to explore, to extend the realm of understanding of human beings. It's fascinating to participate in deep sea submergent, deep sea ventures, voyages by human beings. And that's why I volunteered and enjoyed a submersible trip down to see the Titanic way down in the ocean. That's why I went on voyages to the North Pole, because the people who conduct these type trips will also be typical of the organizations that allow other human beings, to be able to go into orbit. That, I think, is the key to our future. I think having an inquisitive, open mind and wanting to create, wanting to add a contribution to our knowledge. These are the things that have given me great satisfaction, and I think they are the things to be cherished by young people.
Okay, ready for me to come out? Yeah, just stand by a second. I'll move this over the handrail. How far are my feet from me? Okay, you're right at the edge of the porch. Okay. It's a very simple matter to hop down from one step to the next. Yes, I found it to be very comfortable, and walking is also very comfortable. There you go. Okay, now I think I'll do the same. A little more. About another inch. There, you got it? That's a good step. Yep. About a 3-footer. Beautiful, beautiful. Magnificent desolation.
The lives of James Cameron and Buzz Aldrin have surpassed the dreams of my great-grandfather, Jules Verne. Become the Jules Vernes of the future. Let your imagination, your sense of curiosity, and your thirst for discovery guide your existence. Exploration is just beginning.